This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust that today this will be like a vitamin or supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? Leave a rating and a brief written review. It will enable others to locate this podcast. I hope you're having a great day. Today I want to speak to you about calm leadership for the anxious times in which we're living. And I have about 9 things that I want to point out on how to remain calm when the whole world seems to be giving way. These are anxious times. If you are a person of faith and if you're involved in church life, I would recommend a couple of books by Peter Stanke, including about leadership in anxious times, and a new one that I've just started. They're very helpful, but let's just jump into this. When you or your organization are facing a difficulty, what do you do? How do you as a leader in your family, in your not-for-profit, in your organization, how do you remain calm? I mean, because people really vary considerably in how they address and handle emotionally challenging events. Some people are just plain reactive, and there are times when we are all that way. It's easy to blame someone else. It's easy to criticize others and to do so very harshly. It's easy at times when you're worn down to just take offense very easily. It's to focus on the fact that everything else is someone else's fault, and it's easy to start blaming and looking for an instant solution. And we cannot oftentimes, leaders, see that oftentimes, not always, but a lot of the times we had a part to play in it. Then there are others who, when they're going through really anxious times, give anyway on the outside the appearance of being thoughtful and reflective, and they seem to always act on principle and not just their native instinct. They can stand back, kind of remove themselves, not literally, but just they'll step back and have great observation skills. And then they, rather than being reactive, are more responsive. And they seem to be intentional, and they seem to be looking for the wisest choice. So how are we going to do this when we're facing an anxious time? All of us have faced a hard time. Right now, a good many of us are going through some difficult and certainly anxiety-producing times. So leader, what do? Number 1, you have to be transparent. We can't hide what's going on. When anxiety comes and knocks on the door, usually anger, anguish, and grief are right alongside of it. There's always a temptation when we're facing, whether it's a business problem, personal problem, family problem, there's always a temptation to find a scapegoat. Whose fault is this? Let's find the culprit and let's beat up on them. Part of the transparency means an openness to at least admit, Houston, we do have a problem. All is not well. It is at times like this in which a leader, she is very needed, and you just need to be transparent. Transparent, I'm using here in a sense as synonymous with being honest and giving a fair appraisal. What you'll usually discover is the folks around you already are aware of it. It will give them more comfort and confidence if they have some sort of a sense that you are aware that we are going through a difficult time. Right along with being transparent, my leadership friend, I would also say find someone to talk to. This is why we talk about finding a friend that you can visit with, a coach, a mentor, a colleague. It's very difficult to find the person to share this with when you have not built that relationship before. So one caution I would give is identify this person before the floodwaters hit and before the crisis breaks out. But be that as it may, you need someone to talk to for lots of reasons, but one is Anxiety is as contagious as influenza. It seems to draw and connect people. If you let one person unleash their anxiety, it won't be long before it has a ripple effect through the entire organization. I mean, there is acute anxiety. There is some anxiety from just goes along with doing the job. But acute anxiety is just something that has popped up, something that has happened, or maybe something that's been building for a while. But it's situational and it must be addressed. And so before you dive in on what you're going to do, it is really good at that point to find that person and talk to them. Now, I'm going to tell you that number 3 is one that helped me immensely. 2019 was a very difficult year for my wife and I. We had health. She had health issues that, thank God, she weathered beautifully. We had difficulties with our profession, a certain situation, some family difficulties with our extended family, and all in all, it was a tough year. It was also the year in which I had already built exercise into the regiment of my life. And what I discovered is you really need physical exercise. As much as we all know that physical exercise is important for our health, I found that it helped be a great stress reliever. It helped to calm down the anxiety. After I was done with my exercise regimen, I noticed that I had a much more calm spirit. My mind was more at rest. So if you don't want to do physical exercise just for the physical health benefits, I highly recommend it to you that you do it for your mental, emotional, spiritual side of things. It will help you to remain calm. So find some physical exercise. It sort of relieves and lets out some of that tension that you are in fact living with. The 4th is over-communicate. Because you know that everyone is anxious, not just you as the leader. Therefore, they really need to hear from you. It would be better to over-communicate. They're looking for you for leadership. Now, you don't have to bend the truth. You don't have to act like nothing is happening. But you do have to tell them that we are aware of it and we are working on it, and together we'll get out of it. You know, there's a rule in a hospital for caretakers that simply says this: in case of a cardiac arrest, take your own pulse first. It's also, as we're flying on airplanes, in case of an emergency and the oxygen tubes come down, please put your own on first before you help someone else. Most of us are going to try to help our children, whoever else is sitting by us that's with us. The first person you have to help is yourself. The next one then is breathe. Now, I follow that right up after I gave the illustration on the oxygen tanks in the airplanes. But once in a while, you just need to step back. Now, if you're a spiritual person, it's time to pray. Not only does that put us in touch with the Lord, but it has a calming effect on us as well. And just step back and breathe. Take a deep breath. This will help you through prayer, breathing. Some of you meditate. Will help you with some self-management, becoming a non-anxious presence. Anxiety is always present. You're never going to be totally rid of anxiety. It's just a fundamental human expression and experience. But take a deep breath, pull back, pray, get yourself centered. The 6th thing that I would say that will help you be a calm leader in such anxious times as we now live is what helps you remain calm. Now, I'm not talking about counterproductive and destructive behaviors. Don't get lost in a bottle of alcohol. Don't go on a binge eating. And I'm okay with you watching Netflix, but don't binge watch Netflix as an avoidance technique for dealing with the matter at hand. Perhaps it's going on a walk. Perhaps it's just taking half a day and just reorienting yourself. Perhaps it's any one of the things that we've already described today, of talking to someone, getting some physical exercise, spending some time meditating and praying. But I would be paying attention, because this is not the last anxious times you're going to experience in life. And so make an inventory in your mind of, these are the things that I am able to do when I'm feeling stressed and anxious, and they have a tremendous capacity to help calm me down for the moment. You'll know what they are, you'll know where they are. So I would just sort of kind of find a list like that. You just need to always be aware of what your limits are, as well as the limits of your staff. You have to have an understanding of where I end and others begin. We have to respect the rights of others and make sure that those boundaries are around of ourselves. You cannot sacrifice your values, your convictions, and your beliefs just to be a peacekeeper. You do need to understand there are certain things that I'm willing to die for, but most of what I find on social media posts that people post angrily are not hills upon which to die. So find out which that which is a principle that I will draw a line and I will not cross it. A lot of other things that we get worked up about are not that important. So make sure you understand that your job is to stay on course, resolve the matter at hand, follow through, do your best not to react, not to sabotage, but find those things that help you to remain calm. The seventh one is collaborate. Isolation can become the enemy in a situation like this. Now, I understand if you truly are the leader of something, that ultimately, after all the inputs have been given and all of the counsel has been received, you, ma'am or sir, are the one who at the end of the day is charged with making the decision. I understand that. Believe me, I really do. But don't allow an anxious time to be a time for you to isolate from others. You really need to collaborate. The eighth thing that I would say is, go ahead and admit it to the people in your organization that we are in uncharted territory. Like the early explorers, we have marched off the map. I think when we've been facing the recent pandemic situation in the world, none of us that are alive today, or very few of us, can go back to when we faced a similar situation. So we're doing the best that we can, and we may as well admit to people, we're all trying to figure this out. We are building the wagon as we go. But here seems to be the best practices. Here seems to be a way we can get back on track. You see, to be a non-anxious presence, which is what we need our leader to be. Not that you'll be anxiety-free. Anxiety is a part of the human experience. But what it means is you can't let it drive you. It can't be the driver of your behavior. Because to be alive is to have an anxiety disorder. We're all going to have times where we face anxiety. So go ahead and admit. Now, the reason you need to admit it is everyone else in your organization, your family, already understands this. They just want to know for certain, do you understand the fact that we are in deep water, uncharted territory, we are off the map, we are figuring this out as we go. Just your admission of that will raise the comfort level in your organization. Unfortunately, so many leaders are fearful that if I let it out of the bag, I don't know, then people won't respect me. The opposite is actually true. When you admit that I don't know, but we're going to figure it out, and if we have to change, and we have to recalibrate, if we have to go a different direction, we are going to do that, but we will figure this out together. The ninth and the final one is, always remember when you're in a tough spot and you're in a tough place, especially those that are work-related, remember there's a reason they call it work. They don't call it holiday, they don't call it vacation, they call it work because it is work. I remember a general superintendent in my group called me over to ask me a question, how things were going at such and such a place years ago, a place that I'd gone to that was sort of filled with a lot of conflict. And I kind of hemmed and hawed and said, well, some days good and some days not so good. And he raised his finger and held it up toward my face and said, Ron, let me tell you what my old dad told me. If they pay you money for it, there's a trick to it. That was his very clever way of saying what I just said to you. If it's called work, there's a reason. And remember, we are called there. We are doing what we are doing because we have been given this opportunity to help people solve the problems and be a calm leadership presence in these anxious times. You have been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this has been like a vitamin or supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? Leave a rating and a brief written review. It will enable others to find this podcast. Remember, my leadership friend, even in these anxious days, you are doing better than you think you are. You really are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.